After 18 days of exploring Maritime Canada in our van, we might be convinced that this is Canada's best kept van life secret.
But here's what the other guides won't tell you.
Most maritime guides show you the highlights. We're showing you the reality.
We covered both Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, including parts most tourists never see.
2,000 plus miles, 10 campgrounds, 3 harvest hosts, and 1 very expensive windshield lesson.
Everything we wish we'd known before we left, the good, the challenging, and the absolutely essential.
In this episode, we're going to talk about our road trip overview,
must-do experiences,
van life challenges,
seasonal timing,
food and accommodations,
our budget,
and what we'd change next time.
Ready for your next adventure?
We're Sully
and Vicky.
From Wild Mile Wanderers. We've been married over 25 years, have conquered countless trails, and have endless stories to share.
Join us as we explore van life, hidden trails, and worldwide adventures.
From trails to travels, our endless pursuit starts now. So if you haven't had a chance to see our previous video on planning the decision process we made, I'll put a link to it up above. I'd suggest you go check that out to get a lot more details on how we arrived at our whole road trip and the decisions we made.
But here's a highlight of some of the key places that we visited on this trip. So we came into Canada through New Brunswick. We made a quick stop in Moncton before making our way out to Cape Breton. After we spent some time in Cape Breton, we made a quick stop in Pictou on our way to Halifax for a few days. And then from there, we made it up to Port Royal for some time in history there. Mm-hmm. And then some fun in the Bay of Fundy on the Nova Scotia side before crossing back over into New Brunswick to visit Fundy National Park on our way back home through Maine.
Most guides suggest skipping New Brunswick, but we think that would be a huge mistake.
Yeah, we really enjoyed, I think, Fundy National Park. We really love Acadia National Park, and the town of Alma right outside of Fundy National Park really reminds us of Bar Harbor, so I think we really definitely enjoyed our time there. Plus, we got to lay back and relax a little more there.
Yeah, at that point of the trip, we were ready for a little downtime.
Yeah, we had a little burnout.
Yeah, so it was well timed. Hopewell Rocks, that's actually where we went kayaking. That was a lot of fun to get out on the water and see it different than most folks get to see it.
And then the Fundy Trail Parkway.
Yeah.
It is a provincial park, so you do have to pay. But I think it was worth the money. It was a 19-mile drive, and the sights you see on that drive are stunning.
Yeah, so don't skip New Brunswick. Everybody's heard of Nova Scotia. It's a tourist place to go, but it offers you so many things, from the beautiful mountains to the historical landmarks, and even its urban environment with Halifax, its capital city.
I think some of our favorite things out in Cape Breton were visiting the small town of Baddock, obviously the Cabot Trail, and the Louisburg Fortress.
Yep. And then obviously Halifax, as we said, speaks for itself, has everything from gardens to concerts to another fort there you can see. And then even the historical sites like Grand Pré.
Yeah, and Annapolis Royal if you want to learn more about Acadian history.
French and British. It really is multicultural out there. So lots to see in Nova Scotia. That's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to dive into some of our favorite spots a little bit later in the video. We want to take a moment, talk a little bit about route optimization. We probably didn't do the best route there is. Reality met us when we got up there. Roads were a lot smaller, a lot slower speeds than we anticipated, which meant it took a lot longer to get to places.
Another challenge is there's not an easy way to do a full loop around Nova Scotia while also hitting New Brunswick.
Yeah, you're going to do some level of backtracking if you do that. I think next time, it would be fun. We talked about it. We'd probably take the ferry from Bar Harbor over to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, and then that would bring you into Yarmouth on Nova Scotia, which is on the kind of more southeastern part.
Southwestern?
Southwestern, yeah. My rights and lefts. Part of Nova Scotia. Then we could loop around Nova Scotia and then come back and hit everything in New Brunswick.
Yeah. No perfect way, but that's probably what we do next time. So we put together a list. We actually have it here with us because we won't remember it all, of places that are absolutely essential to go see, highly recommended, good if time allows, and things you could skip or modify. For me, the number one thing was definitely tidal bore rafting. I was really nervous before we did it, but had a blast afterward. I'd say it's more fun than the Cabot Trail and some of the other things we saw because it's adventure. I would just say do the 2-hour tour and not the 4-hour though.
Yeah, we would be hurting if we did the 4-hour tour.
Definitely, 2 hours was plenty. Even the younger kids on the boat said 2 was enough.
Yeah. So kind of one of my other favorite highlights was Fundy National Park, which is absolutely beautiful. And the town of Alma right next to it gave us a little time to kind of relax towards the end of our trip. And then hitting the Fundy Trail Parkway, which is a provincial national park. So there is a fee, but it is absolutely stunning. There's a ton of sights you could see. You could probably spend all day on that one trail.
Yep. Fortress Louisburg, won't get into too many of the details. You can see that in some of our other videos there. Need to budget a full day. The 3 hours we had was definitely not adequate enough. And it was early in the season, so not all the historical reenactors were out.
Yeah.
Highly recommended.
So going into ones that we would, you just told me highly recommended.
I did.
Cabot Trail was absolutely stunning. There were so many different sights to see. The one thing we are disappointed we didn't see along the Cabot Trail was Meat Cove, but that's definitely on the list for next time.
Yeah. Make sure your brakes are good. A lot of steep inclines and declines, and there is usually construction in the summer, so just take that into consideration. Halifax museums.
Yeah.
So many to see. It worked out well for us. It was a rainy day, so we were able to take advantage of that and do some indoor activities.
Yeah, and check out definitely the Immigration Museum and the Maritime Museum.
Yeah, those are our must-dos in the market. And then Baddock as well. Small little picturesque town.
Yep.
Alexander Graham Bell actually had a house there and did a lot of his early experimentation there.
And then for our good if time allows, so Peggy's Cove, everybody knows Peggy's Cove Lighthouse is probably one of the most photographed lighthouses out there. It is not too far from Halifax. You could do it. There's a lot of day trips out there, but it is an item if you've got limited time. You know, you don't spend a lot of time there, so maybe you could better use it someplace else.
And weather dependent as well.
Yeah.
Although we had fun in the rain.
We did.
And last, Lunenburg. It's a UNESCO heritage site. It's really hard for us to say. It was really rainy. We're kind of tired at the end of that. We've been to Peggy's Cove. Just ran over to town to get a bite to eat and then back. Obviously, if weather was nicer, we would have checked out more.
And then for our kind of skip or modify, so Keji National Park, if you have families and kids, it's a great place to go. They have so many activities, but for us that wanted something a little more quiet, the main national park is not something we may go to again, but definitely the seaside portion that's a little farther south is a must-see. With the hike we did out there, out to the beaches and through the low scrub pine trees. It smelled like Christmas time in July.
Yep. So that's the list. So our folks, our van lifers out there, you know there's traveling with a van can be exciting. There's also some challenges you face, particularly for us on this trip, the Cabot Trail. Our folks out west who go up the big mountains may not think so much of it, but out here we have, out on the Cabot Trail, there was 14% plus grades, inclines and declines. As a result, meaning you had to take it slow on a lot of the spots. Make sure your brakes are in good working order, obviously. And if you've got a bigger RV, really make sure your brakes are in good working order. And then along the trails we mentioned before, sometimes the scenic stops could be really full. So depending on your rig size could dictate kind of if you can get into those scenic stops on the parking trail as you're going along. And, you know, the parking part of that to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, and it wasn't really just the Cabot Trail. I think any of the scenic sites we went to is consideration of, you know, with the van, would there be space and could we fit in? One thing that we did plan that worked out really well in Halifax is we picked a campground that was close enough, but just outside of Halifax in Dartmouth. And we picked it because it was on their public transit route, which was very cost effective. We were able to easily take the bus
and the ferry,
which was fun too,
yeah.
into Halifax. And the ferry took you right into the boardwalk, which is kind of, if you check out that episode, one of the nice scenic places to walk through Halifax.
Yeah, obviously weather's a consideration with van life. The van can get small pretty quick if you had a string of rainy days. So make sure you have some indoor activities planned, as we mentioned before, and some of our must-dos. Have those ready to go.
And then obviously we went from the US to Canada, so we had to deal with a couple border crossings. So make sure you have all your proper documentation for those border crossings. And then before you cross, make sure you clean out. You don't even think about it, the food that's in your fridge and the veggies and produce and things that they won't allow you to take across the border.
Even firewood, something to take into consideration. And then the unexpected. Everybody knows it with van life, it happens. We had our cracked windshield.
Yep.
Obviously an unplanned expense. It's just the
another
reality.
good thing for Halifax transport, because we were able to get it fixed in Halifax and jump right on the bus.
Yep. So obviously, seasons play a big factor on the trip and what you can do. We went in June and July.
Yeah.
We
went probably not long after the provincial parks opened. I think we may have wanted to move maybe a week, just so that we could have hit some of those things like Lewisburg with the reenactors.
Yeah, you do get the longer days, warmer weather, obviously. Some bigger crowds, though.
Yeah, especially on Canada Day.
Yeah. August is a great time to go. A lot of folks like it then.
A lot of the same challenges, though, with the crowds and making sure you're able to get into campgrounds in different places.
I think that's like when a lot of like their different like kind of festivals, those kind of things kind of happen up there at that time of year. So that may be a plus. And then September, usually less crowded.
You might get a chance to see some beautiful foliage, especially on the Cabot Trail. Yeah.
And then anytime after that, October, I think you risk seasonal closures. Weather can be iffy at that point. Not to say not to go, but it's just things you want to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. So if you've been to Nova Scotia, what would you recommend as the best month or months to go to visit?
Yeah. Or any of the Canadian Maritimes for that matter. And if you are planning a trip, what month or time of year are you planning to go? Let us know in the comments below. If you've seen some of our videos before or even this most recent series, we've used Harvest Host. We're not sponsored by them or anything, but they are definitely a great service. We did use 3. Yeah.
Yep.
I do have a list here because I can't remember everything. Before we went across the border, we stayed at Hidden Springs Winery. It's actually one of their wine bottles over there. That's a great experience, great location before we went in. Definitely a great spot.
Yeah, ideal if you're crossing over into New Brunswick from Maine.
Yep. Lightship Brewery, I think it was an ideal location for Lunenburg. Would have been if the weather was better for us. We did have a beautiful morning the next day.
Yeah.
Great little brewery, great little place to go in. They had some guys in there singing sea shanties, so some live entertainment. And then the last one we stayed at was the Old Foggy Distillery. Which
was, we picked this one because it was a perfect stop on our drive back to Maine through New Brunswick. It wasn't far from St. John's.
Yep.
So it was an ideal spot.
I mean, there is value with it versus campgrounds can be a little cheaper. You pay an annual subscription and then they ask you to just patronize whatever particular service they have, whether distillery, winery, restaurant, etc.
Yeah.
And then
campground. So we stayed at a lot of provincial and national parks for camping.
Yeah. Provincial or like state park equivalents.
Yeah. And we actually enjoyed the provincial parks, I think, a little more than the national parks. They were a little less crowded, a little smaller, and some of them were in ideal, beautiful locations.
Yeah.
If you're staying at some of the national parks, one thing we learned at Keji is we picked a site and we didn't really account for exactly how large it was. So if you want something a little more quiet, maybe pick a site on the outside loops, give you a little privacy at least on one side.
Yeah, we were backed up, like literally. They squeezed it in there as much as they could. Fire restrictions were actually something that we didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
And actually after the fact, played a bigger role up there. Things got shut down for no fires.
And not just the fire restrictions, but also a lot of the campgrounds don't have fire pits at their site. They're just kind of community fire pits.
Right. And make sure you book early as soon as you can. Vic took care of that piece. She was watching. She had it in the calendar for the day. The days you could get on the sites and reserve, she did that. So that was smart. Do you want to talk about our favorite campground?
So I think some of our favorites were Murray Beach Provincial Park, which was in New Brunswick, right on the ocean.
Yep.
And then another one, Five Islands Provincial Park, which we stayed at.
One night.
We wish we could have stayed longer. And as we drove in, everybody told us we had the best site in the park, which was just overlooking the Bay of Fundy, which was absolutely beautiful.
And then Scoodic Woods Campground, which is actually in the States. It's a quiet side from Acadia. Beautiful laid out campgrounds, beautiful spots. Definitely recommend that one. And then food strategies, our last piece. Obviously talked about accommodations, food's the other piece. We'll get a little bit more into our budget and kind of what versus what, but need to take into consideration when to cook and when to eat out.
Yeah, and then one of the challenges with the fire restrictions was we packed a Dutch oven so that we could cook over the fire, We never ended up using it because of those either fire restrictions or we weren't able to have a fire at our campsite. I didn't want to cook for everybody at the community campsite.
No. And take advantage of the local markets for some good deals on food. Obviously, one of the biggest things I want to know when I'm looking for planning a trip and watch other YouTubers is, what did it cost? What was that trip? It looked like a lot of fun, but what was the
how much
expenses?
money do I need to save so I can go do it?
Right. So we've got a sheet here because we can't remember it. We've broken it down into major expenses, some money-saving wins, unexpected costs, and then Vic will run through kind of a quick summary of some trade-offs and things we could have done differently. So major expenses, campgrounds.
Yeah, so we stayed at primarily provincial and national parks, which ranged between $25 to $45 a day. We did splurge a little bit on Shuby. That was the one private campground we stayed at, but we picked that specifically because it was on the Halifax public transit system.
So we were able to take Metro, save a little on gas, not have to disconnect.
Probably save on parking.
Yeah, exactly. Activities, tidal bore, as I mentioned, as we said before, was not cheap. That was about $150. Kayaking
was about surprisingly a little more. It was actually about, I think, 195 Canadian.
And then museums were fairly reasonable. Obviously, depending on your circumstances, there's, child rates, adult rates, seniors, students.
Yeah.
They typically range $10 to $25 per person on average, give or take. And then our biggest expense, fuel.
Fuel, yeah.
Hard to be avoided, but and folks know that diesel is more money up in Canada, but we spent almost $800 on fuel.
Yeah. And then one thing we lucked out at was the park passes. This summer, Canada was offering free admission to all national parks and national historic sites.
Yep.
So we didn't have to pay for entry to any of those. But what we had planned for initially when we were looking at the trip was to purchase the Canada Discovery Pass, which gets you admission to 80 national sites for free for a total of a year at the cost of $75 Canadian per person.
Right. And we did save 25% on the campgrounds. So it wasn't free for the camping at the national parks. It's just discounted. And we talked about the other things before, harvest host, cooking, those kind of things. Unexpected costs we also mentioned as well was the windshield, which is about $800.
So overall, our total cost came in around $3,500, which does not include, obviously, the windshield, which equated to about $200 a day, which I think is pretty good cost.
100 a person?
For that kind of trip.
Yep.
And we could have saved some more money. We did splurge to stay at Glenora Distillery, which cost about $290. So if we camped instead, we probably would have been around $250 savings. And then, like we kind of talked about, we ate out for about 10 meals, so we kind of splurged on eating out. So if we cooked more in the van, we probably could have saved another $100 or $200.
Right. So up to you what your individual budget is. We could have made some trades in hindsight. Again, your individual circumstances may vary, but that's what it cost us.
Yeah.
So I think looking back, I like to say hindsight's 2015. It's a little better than normal. I think one of the things we would do different is obviously the timing. We did have 18 days. You need at least 3 weeks minimum. I think 1 month ideal, just for the two provinces we saw.
Yeah, and just a portion of New Brunswick we saw, because I think another part of New Brunswick we originally wanted to hit was one of the national parks farther north in New Brunswick. But I think even with a month, that would be hard to see.
Yeah, definitely. I know folks have spent a month on PEI or one of the provinces alone. We talked a little bit about some of the route optimization.
Yeah, I think if we did it again, we'd definitely take the ferry.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Besides the fact it's fun, one of the reasons we didn't do it was the cost. But doing it one way, it may be worthwhile. It's about 3.5 hours from Bar Harbor.
And if you book early enough, they do discounted tickets. If you book in advance, I think like 4 or 5 months, they do the discounts, I think, right after the new year.
Right. We talked about, because that would allow for a little better route that you could do, although there's no ideal way to get around Nova Scotia just because the way it pinches to get to Cape Breton without seeing some things twice.
Yeah.
Other things. Obviously, we want to see PEI.
Yep.
And Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
Right. So that's a lot more time.
Yeah, that's another 2 months.
Yeah, easily. The ferry ride alone is like
17 hours, I think.
I think so. From PEI, right?
No.
Or from
Sydney over in Cape Breton area.
Yeah. So not quick, but everybody says it's amazing, worth seeing. So definitely would want to do that.
Meat Cove we missed.
Meat Cove.
This time around, I definitely want to see that and maybe camp there.
Yeah. And we also didn't get to camp on the other side of Cape Breton. We only stayed on the one side.
Yeah, and hindsight, we probably should have camped on that other side. And there was that bike path that we stopped at once. I think there's a lot more I would want to do on Cape Breton that we didn't get to do.
Yeah. So other things, reflections?
I don't know, just wasn't long enough.
No, never long enough. That's the biggest reflection. Take your time if you can.
I think stay in places more than one day. We stayed, I think, only 3 of the campgrounds we stayed at 2 days. The rest of them were all a single day.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time driving rather than maybe having more central hubs to stay at for a couple days and visit things from.
Right. Rick Steve talks about that in his books. You know, he says a minimum of 2 nights at most places.
Yeah.
And 3 or a little longer if you can. We didn't listen, so lesson
There was
learned.
just too much to try to see.
Yeah.
We need to think about that in the future and maybe cut locations.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just some of the reflections and things we do a little differently next time.
So if you were planning a trip and you've seen our itinerary, what would you change?
Yeah. Or if you've been, what were the things that we didn't do that you say you should have done? Why didn't you people go do that? Leave that in a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and recommendations as well. And always give us a thumbs up. We don't mind those too.
Yeah.
Helps out. So please give us some good feedback. So I think that's a wrap on our summary here.
Yeah. Up next, for the next video, we'll be talking about all the van modifications we did prior to the trip, what was successful, what wasn't successful, what would we pack and not pack, since we definitely had that jigsaw puzzle we solved with packing the van.
Yeah. We do have some local adventures, things a little closer to home after that we'll be sharing with you. And then the big series.
Our next big adventure, or multi-day adventure, well, not quite multi-week, but is out to Vancouver and Vancouver Island.
Yeah. So we'll be featuring that series later this fall. So make sure you subscribe, because you're not going to want to miss those.
And then if you are interested in our complete itinerary, in the description below, we've got a link posted to our wander log with all of the information from this Nova Scotia and New Brunswick trip.
Right. If you grabbed our previous one in our planning video, this was updated. This has the after the fact stuff. So
yes, you can see a little before and after on what we had to change based on a little bit of over planning.
Right. So as always, as I said before, if you hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, like, that always helps us out. I'll make sure you get notified for when that Vancouver series comes out later this fall. As always, keep wandering.
Bye.